If I asked you when humans started kissing, you'd probably say something like, forever. It feels instinctive, animal, built into us. Every culture does it, right? Actually, no, not even close. And once you start digging into the real history of the kiss, you find two completely different answers. One written down on clay tablets, and one buried millions of years deep in our evolutionary past. Let's start with the one we can actually read. For a long time, scientists pointed to a specific text from South Asia, written around 1500 BCE, as the earliest solid evidence of romantic kissing. Old habit? Sure. Case more or less closed. Except it wasn't. In 2023, two researchers, Troels Pank Arbol and Sophie Lund Rasmussen, published a paper in the journal Science that pushed the timeline back by an entire 1,000 years. Their source? Thousands of surviving cuneiform tablets from ancient Mesopotamia, the civilization that grew up between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in what's now Iraq and Syria. These tablets, some dating back roughly 4,500 years, casually mention kissing all over the place. Kissing between lovers, kissing between friends, kissing between family members. It wasn't some rare, sacred act reserved for myth. It shows up in private letters in everyday life, treated like something completely normal. Archaeologists even found a 3,800-year-old clay model of a nude couple embracing and kissing on a piece of furniture, which is either extremely romantic or extremely awkward to have dug out of the ground, depending on how you look at it. Interestingly, the very earliest mentions aren't about ordinary people at all. They show up in mythological stories about gods as part of the dramas playing out between deities, long before any scribe thought to write about two humans kissing each other. It's only a bit later, in the early 2nd millennium BCE, that the record shifts toward private letters and everyday people. In other words, we can literally watch kissing move, tablet by tablet, from the realm of myth into the realm of daily life. Here's the part that makes this genuinely useful history, though, and not just trivia. Buried in those same Mesopotamian archives are medical texts describing a disease called bushanu. It caused painful blisters in and around the mouth. Sound familiar? Researchers now think it may be one of the earliest written descriptions of something very close to herpes simplex virus, the same virus still spread by kissing today. In other words, the moment we get our first solid written proof that humans were kissing, we also get our first written proof that kissing was making people sick. Some things never change. A separate study on ancient DNA even suggests that as populations migrated across Bronze Age Europe and settled into denser communities, the herpes virus spread right along with them, riding, quite literally, on the back of the increased kissing. So, mystery solved. Humans started kissing 4,500 years ago? Not exactly. That's just the oldest kiss anyone happened to write down. And if you like this kind of video, subscribe now. In writing itself, it only existed for a few hundred years at that point. The real origin of kissing goes back much, much further than any tablet. In late 2025, a team of researchers tried to answer that bigger question using something called a Bayesian model, essentially a statistical tool that estimates how likely something is to be true based on everything related to it that we already know. Instead of looking at humans, they looked at kissing-like behavior across primates, chimpanzees, bonobos, gorillas, and more. They defined a kiss loosely as gentle, non-aggressive mouth-to-mouth contact where no food changes hands. Turns out, this behavior shows up again and again across the primate family tree. Chimps do it, bonobos do it, tongue and all, usually to make up after a fight rather than as foreplay. Humans obviously do it. And when researchers ran the numbers, they estimated that this kind of mouth-to-mouth contact likely evolved somewhere around 21.5 million years ago in the shared ancestor of all great apes. Let that sink in for a second. 21.5 million years. Mesopotamia's 4,500-year-old love letters suddenly look almost embarrassingly recent by comparison. Why would evolution bother selecting for this in the first place? A few competing theories exist, and they're not mutually exclusive. One is that a kiss is basically a taste and smell test, close-range sniffing and tasting that lets one animal gather information about another's health, hormones, and even genetic compatibility, all without either party realizing that's what's happening. Another is that it triggers a flood of bonding chemicals, like oxytocin, that help cement social or romantic attachment. And in bonobos specifically, kissing looks less like courtship and more like conflict resolution, a way of smoothing things over after tension in the group. Different species, it turns out, maybe using the exact same gesture to solve completely different social problems. And it gets stranger. The same research modeled where Neanderthals fit into this family tree and came out with an 84.3% probability that Neanderthals kissed too. That's not just a guess pulled from nowhere. Scientists have found that modern humans and Neanderthals shared a specific strain of mouth bacteria, one that's transmitted through saliva. Genetic analysis shows that strain didn't split apart in the two species until somewhere between 112,000 and 143,000 years ago, hundreds of thousands of years after humans and Neanderthals had already branched off as separate species. Which raises an obvious question. How exactly does a mouth bacterium jump between two different species long after they've stopped being the same one? The leading theories are either sharing food around a fire or something a lot more intimate. Given that most people outside of Africa carry a small percentage of Neanderthal DNA in their genome, direct proof our ancestors were interbreeding, the intimate explanation isn't exactly a stretch. There's a real chance that somewhere in Ice Age Europe, a human and a Neanderthal kissed. So we've got two timelines now. A written record of romantic kissing that goes back 4,500 years, and a biological capacity for kissing that stretches back millions of years, older than our own species, shared with apes we split from long ago. That should settle it. Kissing is ancient, kissing is universal, end of video. Except, here's the twist nobody expects. Kissing romantically is not universal, not even close, and not even today. In 2015, anthropologist William Jankowiak and his colleagues studied 168 cultures around the world, digging through decades of ethnographic records, looking specifically for evidence of romantic lip-to-lip kissing. Their finding, only 46% of cultures had any record of it at all. More than half had none. Zero. Some cultures didn't just skip it, they found it genuinely repulsive. When a South African people called the Thonga first saw Europeans kissing in 1890, their reaction was disgust. The Mahanaku people of the Amazon bite each other's eyebrows as a sign of affection, but have no tradition of kissing. And on the Trobriand Islands in Melanesia, kissing was reportedly described as a rather insipid and silly form of amusement, hardly worth the fuss Western couples make over it. Jankowiak's team also found something else interesting. The more socially complex a culture is, the more likely it is to practice romantic kissing. So while the biological wiring for mouth-to-mouth contact may go back tens of millions of years, turning that wiring into a romantic ritual, the kind of thing you'd write a love letter about on a clay tablet, looks like something specific cultures had to invent, adopt, or decide against over and over again all around the world. So, when did ancient humans start kissing? Depends entirely on which question you're actually asking. If you want the oldest written proof of romance, it's Mesopotamia, about 4,500 years ago, complete with a sexually transmitted disease as a side effect. If you want the biological root of mouth-to-mouth contact itself, you have to go back roughly 21.5 million years to an ancestor we share with every great ape alive today, and possibly bring Neanderthals into your family photo album while you're at it. And if you want to know whether kissing is some universal expression of human love, the honest answer is, for well over half the cultures that have ever been studied, it simply never was. The kiss you think of as timeless and instinctive turns out to be one of history's more complicated love stories. If you enjoyed unpacking that, there's plenty more where it came from. Hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.